What's up, everybody? Welcome to Sales Remastered. I appreciate everybody who's here this morning. Hope you're having a blessed day. I'm actually including the Facebook page, so I'm dual streaming right now, just to bring a little bit more awareness to this live stream. For those of you who are joining or received the email, as I had mentioned, I've got a really exciting stream coming up this morning because the information and the content that I'm going to be sharing with you is more or less a breakdown. It's a real bare bones analysis of the ingredients, as I had mentioned, that enables you to cook up a perfect system. And if you follow along and you jot down some notes during this stream, you may identify where in your sales process that you may need to focus time in, because you may be really strong with the selling portion, but not necessarily as strong with the closing side of it. Or you may be very strong with the marketing, meaning you can get the attraction, the interest. You can determine the motive, but when it gets down to selling and closing, maybe you got some fallout. And so I'm going to cover some of the ingredients to cook up your own solid sales process. And through the breakdown, or through the phases that I like to call them, it's very similar to cooking up a dish, little side note, like, I'm not sure if you guys have ever seen the show like Master Chef or like these different cooking channels, but I'm kind of, amazed on how some of these chefs can really remember every single detail, every single ingredient that goes along into making this final dish. And the reason why I said the perfect ingredients to cook up your dish is because there are certain times where you put in specific ingredients in order to have the right outcome. And the right outcome within the stream that I'm trying to outline for you guys is obviously a closed sale. So, I'm going to have the chat box up in a minute. Feel free to leave some comments. Let me know what your takeaway is. And more importantly, if you're catching me on the live stream, I appreciate you taking the time to invest in yourself, because it's little things like this that actually sets you apart from your competition. It's taking the time to, invest into yourself that will allow you to remove a lot of the grind, a lot of the headache. It's because you're understanding the art, and I believe the sales process, the closing side of it, it is really a science. There is a formula to it, and it takes repetition, but it also takes practice. It takes studying your craft, and without taking the time to really understand it, I think that you're putting yourself at a disadvantage, because there could be just this one key component that you may be overlooking or not necessarily giving the right amount of attention towards, and thus you're not getting the final outcome or the dish per se. So starting off, I'm going to drop a great deal of value. I definitely recommend that you grab a pen and paper and really jot down some of these phases that I'm going to cover with you. Starting off with marketing to lead. I think that, a lot of loan officers, especially in this time of the year right now, is solely relying on one specific marketing source. And typically that marketing source is inbound. You see, marketing, when you think of the word marketing, you might be thinking of like advertisements, Facebook ads, marketing, but marketing also includes telemarketing, right? And ultimately what marketing does is it's looking for the motive, right? And so I believe that in order to capture the attention of somebody, which ultimately that's what marketing is, you have to understand what the motive is. And so the very first phase that we're going to cover is marketing to lead. Again, it's marketing to lead, because you have to market in order to capture the attention and figure out the motive and then turn it into a lead. You see, a lead is not just internet leads, aggregate leads. A lead is something that you could have just talked to about a couple months ago. And in order to properly market, I'm a firm believer that you need to actually research and understand who your ideal prospect is, or who your ideal lead is. And if you're currently right now, for example, if you're hooked up to a dialer, you don't necessarily have the advantage of doing recon or research on your prospect in order to understand why they may need your service. So you're kind of blind to the motive of that particular prospect. And so when you put that in line with okay, well, Daniel, who should I be marketing with, or who should I be marketing to? And the answer is that you should be marketing with someone who is actually in need of the service. And so, for example, when we think about telemarketing or when we think about marketing, think about the ad that gives the message of, hey, do debt consolidation, or hey, do cash out, or hey, is it time for home improvements? And when that marketing ad goes out, it only really captures a certain amount of people. But I think there's a lot of untapped features, or at least untapped characteristics of leads that we should really target also, such as FHA, right? Like FHA to conventional, or removal of mortgage insurance. With the development of new programs and products that are available in the market today, there are so many different options for a homeowner to remove themselves from FHA into a conventional and get different mortgage insurance options. Mortgage insurance that's not as permanent or not as long-term as like an FHA. And in most cases, those who have mortgage insurance, their motive is to get out of mortgage insurance. Does that make sense? So really think about where you're marketing to, or who you're marketing to, and don't solely rely on inbound leads, because inbound leads, an aggregate lead could be just a homeowner that clicked on a banner ad, one of those little pop-ups. And it doesn't necessarily mean they're in the market. They probably just saw like a picture that they're interested in, click the button, and the next thing you know, you're connected with them. And if you're not connected with them in the right tonality or in the right mode, then you're not going to capture their interest to turn them into a lead. And a lead is ultimately contact information who's interested in the services that you provide. So keep that in mind. Now, I'm going to give you a takeaway, because the marketing side of it, whether it's an inbound or outbound, I have a very strong sales script that I've shared with my community. And if you have not downloaded a copy of that sales script, I strongly recommend that you get a copy of that. You go to SalesRemastered.com, and I've left a link under the notes of this video where you're catching this. And all you have to do is just go to the bottom of that website when you go to SalesRemastered.com and put in your personal email address. I even put it there that you shouldn't use your business email, because your business domain is going to quarantine my domain. It's coming from Daniel@SalesRemastered.com. So that script is going to tell you word for word how you should approach your inbound and outbound leads in order to dismantle their guard, because marketing just by itself is not necessarily going to put you in front of people who are ready to buy with no questions asked. So really consider that. Now, the next phase is lead to credit pool. And lead to credit pool is sometimes where you may be having issues, and you're going to know you have issues because you're speaking to a lot of people, but you actually never make it to the credit pool. You actually never make it to the credit assessment. And I believe that the credit report is more or less an X-ray into your prospects' buying habits, into their spending habits, into their awareness of how they manage their finances. And as a loan officer, we shouldn't be looking at ourselves as salesmen. We should be looking at ourselves as consultants, as more or less financial planners. And in order to properly do this, we need to assess their credit report, because their credit report shares so many different things with you, right? It shares with you how much they're leveraging their credit limits, like their credit balance to high credit, which is a clear sign of how much cash flow that they have, how much money they have in savings. Also shows you how many recent inquiries they have, like how frugal are they with doing credit reports or credit pools, and how aware are they of how their current credit bureaus are rating them. And this really positions you to be the consultant, to be the educator. But unfortunately, there's a lot of us who never even make it to a credit pool, and primarily it's because we're underwriting the lead as if we have that right, and we shouldn't underwrite leads. And what I mean by underwrite leads is you're doing too much pre-qualification up front, and it's based on your current experience. It's based on what you believe is benefit. But I cannot stress enough that you have to allow the prospect to determine what's benefit. You should not assume what benefit is, because what's benefit to you is completely different to what they believe is benefit. Does that make sense? So, for example, a consumer in California versus a consumer, let's say in Alabama, depending on where you're licensed, right? like a consumer in California is not going to look at $100 savings the same way as a consumer in Alabama. Same thing happens with loan officers. We don't, if we come across a pitch where we can only save them $100, some of us are wired in a way where we interpret that savings, whether or not it's worth our time. And then we kind of adjust our enthusiasm, which is one of the key ingredients to sales in itself. It's the most important ingredient. And when I say enthusiasm, I'm not talking about, hey, welcome to, it's good to have that type of energy, but your enthusiasm should be a combination of tonality along with almost excitement. Kind of think of it like where, if a friend of yours discovered something that they know that you'd be interested in, I want you to think about the enthusiasm that they have in their tone that actually sparks your curiosity. And it sounds something like this: oh man, dude, check this out. Or, it's that enthusiasm, right? And you can transfer that to your prospect, like, oh yeah, watch, check this out. Let me show you. And that has a tonality that attracts your attention. And the same thing happens with the consumers. We can actually drag them towards the direction that we want to drive them. And I think that's important. But besides that, we adjust it if we believe that lead is not going to like our savings. So a lot of it has to do with our own mindset. And I want to remind you guys that qualifying a lead too soon is the main reason why you're not actually filling out an application. And the common way that this happens is the way you're opening up your line with that lead, the way your inbound script works, the way your outbound script works. And what I mean by that is, when a lead comes in, you may be allowing your prospect to drive the conversation towards price, and you don't know it. And typically the way we allow the prospect to drive is we simply give them back the control of the conversation. And this is how it sounds. When we give them control of the conversation, this is exactly how it sounds. How can I help you today? Right? That's it. Now we lost control of that conversation. So when you go to salesremastered.com and you go to the bottom of the website, you're going to see the sales script. And when you get a copy of it, be sure you use your personal email address, the one you get on your cell phone. And you're going to see the wording has no question like that. Like, how can I help you? What are you looking to do today? Why are you calling? And the toughest thing is that if you're wired to say that within your script, it's going to be hard to not do that. You're going to want to, because it's repetitive nature. It's like muscle memory. You're just going to naturally want to do that. But I can't stress enough how important it is to not do that. And I know that contradicts all the other sales training suggestions that are given by maybe your corporate sales trainer. So I want to tell you that these things that I'm sharing with you, I'm not a sales trainer. I'm just a sales enthusiast. I'm a sales junkie. I'm a salesman. At the end of the day, I love the art of sales. And so someone who's in the trenches with you, take my advice over advice from someone who's not necessarily in the trenches with you. So I hope that helps. Now, besides leading the prospect to a credit pull, it has a lot to do with what the conversation is about. And in order to determine what their motive is, there are certain ways to uncover that motive. And some questions that you may not be asking your prospect right now that I think is important to implant into your conversation is this question is exactly how I ask it. I say, outside of the mortgage on the home, are there any credit lines that are on your credit report? And ultimately what I'm doing is I'm dropping the seed of them thinking about debts that are in their credit report. But it also leads me to ask a question like, are there any liens on the house for like solar panels or for judgments or other liens like PACE or hero loans? And ultimately what that does is it helps you figure out early in the conversation if there are what's called clouds on title. Clouds on title are basically things that can interrupt your ability to refinance that loan or provide a home loan for them, because now we have another party who's also in line to get paid. And that's why they have a lien on their title. But when you pull up, like when you discover that there's a hero loan or a hero lien or a solar power lien, sometimes they don't know it because it's not on their credit report. A lot of them don't even realize that it's a lien on their home, and you have to figure that part out early because it really narrows down your choices of solutions that you could present to them. And the last thing you want to do in this type of market and going into 2019 is waste a lot of time talking about a program that you can't even deliver, because it's going to set you back and create these fires and these delays and these time constraints for your own continued origination when you're doing your daily activities. So again, lead to credit pull is an important feature, because lead to credit pull enables you to get that first sign of trust from your prospect, and it positions you to then become the consultant, because much like a doctor looks at your x-ray, they have to look at your x-ray in order to determine what's wrong. And so we're kind of like a doctor in a sense, because we're trying to figure out what's wrong, and that credit pull is going to mention a lot of things with you. But another question you should implant is, in our industry, we have what's called a net. And what a net means is, like, for example, in this conversation, I only see your gross income. I don't know what your net income is. Your net income is after taxes, after your retirement contribution, after your different withholdings. And so your net income is something that only you know. But what I'm trying to find out is what your net is. Net is, you take your net income and you minus out all of your liabilities, your mortgage, your credit cards, even your groceries, even your dining out, your habits, your hobbies. It's basically how much of the net income, we'll use October, for example, how much of October's net income do you have left after all of your expenses are met? All of your hobbies, your dining out, your kids' hobbies, your expenses, babysitting, everything. How much of October's net income is going to follow you into November? And here's the key thing, here's the bonus, is that every single one of your prospects are going to believe that they have more money. They're going to believe that, oh, I have a couple grand. I got $1,000. And it's important that you ask this follow-up question once they answer. And they say, okay, great. So what do you use that net income on? And then they're going to tell you other expenses that should have been part of the original answer. So a lot of them are going to say, oh, well, we use it to go out, or we use it to go out to eat on the weekend. We use it for traveling, or we use it for babysitting. Say, okay, great. So after all that is met, how much of your net income do you have left going into the month? And they may even say a couple $100 or another $1,000. And then you have to follow up with this question and say, great. So if you're netting about $1,000, that means that you have a surplus of $1,000. So where does that money go? And they should say, well, it just stays in the bank. Perfect. How much money do you have now in your current checking and savings? You see, that funnel question, it allows you to ask that awkward question that typically is a very personal question, right? But all you did was pre-frame the conversation in a way that allows you to ask that question. That question is very important, because most homeowners you're going to find live check to check, and that positions you more favorably to drive your message. So that's a very powerful question I always ask. And then from credit pull to pitch. When we do an application, my strongest recommendation is at the point that you get a credit pull, I don't scrub the credit report on the same conversation. There's a lot of loan officers right now that are probably watching who are firm believers that they're a one-call closer. And it could be sometimes your company's rules, like you have to stay on the phone and exhaust them. You have to make them tired. But the problem with that is ultimately what you're doing is you're setting yourself up for buyer's remorse. So you're putting them in a state of confusion, and this can ultimately be a point where they're going to change their mind, and then they're going to go ghost on you when it comes time, because they're forced to say, okay, well, let's go ahead and go forward. But more importantly, us as the loan officer, psychologically, we're drained too, right? And then we start to get kind of frustrated at the very end, and it can spark off the wrong tonality. So the bottom line is that you should really split up those calls. But after you get authorization to pull their credit, how you should transition to the pitch is you should set it up something like, okay, so what I'm going to do is request a copy of the credit report. I'm going to put the information together, and I'm going to send it to your email. If there's anything that's stopping me from sending this out for your review, I'll give you a call. And by that time, you should be at least a good 20 minutes into the conversation. You should have at least enough leverage in order for you to determine what their motive is. Now, they're going to tell you what their motive is, and their motive is to lower a rate, or their motive is to remove mortgage insurance. But what I'm talking about is the motive that we know as financial consultants of where they need help. And where they need help is going to be based on the answers that you were able to extract from them by carefully crafting those creative questions, right? If you're relying just on the questions of your 1003, you're not necessarily setting yourself up for a solid pitch. But by the time that you end that first conversation, it's important to understand a few things. You got to understand who's the finance handler, who's the bill handler, and you're going to know who the bill handler is because you're going to ask them the question when you send payments to your credit cards, how much do you send? And the answer is going to tell you whether or not you're talking to the bill handler, but make sure that you're speaking to the bill handler. And if you haven't checked out the last week's live stream yet, check that one out. It was all about sales objections. And one of the main objections that we meet when we don't include the bill handler is, okay, great, I need to talk to my spouse about this. And it's because we allowed that to happen. And typically it's because we're doing a one-call close, or we're not being strategic enough to ensure that both parties are at the table or on the phone, because they don't necessarily need to be under the same roof. They could be in different areas. You could just conference one another inside that conversation, but ensure that both parties are there. But when you transition to your pitch, the pitch shouldn't be, hey, I'm going to put a couple options together and I'll call you in an hour. Right? Because if you set up the pitch conversation or appointment that way, they're going to be on guard when you open up that next conversation. It's important that you don't do that because you're setting yourself up with the disadvantage of having someone who is playing poker with you. They're not going to tell you what their cards are. They're going to block their emotions and ultimately convince themselves that they're not going to make a decision because they know they're going into a pitch. So if you think about the last time you bought a car, when you sat down with the closer who's trying to sell you that car, you kept thinking in your head like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this unless I get my price. I'm not going to do this, right? And that's our guard. This is just how we operate. So the way you should set it up is say, hey, I'm going to go and put the information together. I can only put together in front of you what you qualify for. And so when I have that information ready, I'm going to email it to you. Very gentle, right? And again, you're planning to see that if there's anything that's stopping me from sending it out, I'll give you a call. But ultimately, I'm going to need your consent anyway. So be sure that such and such is there. And that ultimately is how you set the pitch appointment. But you don't say, hey, I'm going to pitch you. And we don't say it in those words. But how we do say it is, hey, I'm going to give you a call with a couple options. So pay attention to that. And then the next phase is pitch to submission. And submission is obviously in between pitch and submission, you got the lock, right? So pitching, just like I said, in transitioning to the pitch, they shouldn't believe that they're going into a pitch scenario. And so when you start your pitch, they shouldn't believe that they're in a pitch scenario. And we let them know subconsciously because we are wired to say, okay, I got a couple options for you, grab a pen and paper. That's actually putting them on guard. And if you've ever caught any of the content on Sales Remastered, you're going to notice that I never do that. I got a call for a live recorded call that I uploaded last week. It's actually, I'll try to remember to leave a link on this video. But you'll notice how I opened up the conversation was, hey, I'm preparing the information. I'm about to send it out to you. And I have an idea. I want to run it by you real quick before I send this out, get your feedback and get your input. And the reason why it's opened up that way is because it's completely different than saying, hey, I got a couple options. Because when you say, hey, I got a couple options, the prospect is already thinking that they could say no to any of them. However, if you switch up the verbiage and say, hey, I have an idea, I found something, I want to run it by you real quick before I send out the disclosures and get your feedback on it, get your input. And that becomes your pitch, right? And then ultimately, there's a lot of framing that's involved. Again, check out the video of how to really properly pre-frame, because I think that a lot of pitches don't pre-frame the prospect first. And there's various reasons. Either the loan officer doesn't know how, or the loan officer is so much in a rush that they just go straight into price. And there's typically a formula that we subconsciously do when doing a pitch, and that formula is basically price, benefit, and then logistics. In other words, it's your rate and fees, or rate and lender credit, then it's the benefits, and then it's how to get it. And the problem with that is though, is that when you go over price and price and fees, or price and lender credit, that's all they remember, and they're not going to pay attention to the other two components. They may not even let you get to the third. So pay attention to the way you deliver it in the sequential order. Just like a chef, there's a specific time that they do certain actions, a specific time that they add certain ingredients in order to make the dish, right? And so the same thing with us when we're cooking up a sale. There's a sequential order that we really need to follow in driving the message. But when we set up the pitch and we pre-frame them, then it's the conversion of, okay, this pitch, the likelihood of it going to a lock and then submission is going to be determined on how we set up that conversation to lock and submission. And what I've found is that in order to properly set the urgency, don't call your lock a lock, right? Don't allow your prospect to believe that they're locked, because if they believe that they're locked, then there's really no time sensitivity to it. There's no urgency. And so if you're saying, hey, I'm going to go and lock it right now, and you don't have any documentation, you've given it away. You've made it too easy. And so what I like to change the word of lock for, unless I have documentation, is, hey, I can go ahead and request a reservation for 24 hours. It's only going to last for 24 hours. And within that 24-hour period, I need to validate your ability to actually lock the loan. And so now this becomes a carrot that you dangle in front of them. So in order to secure the benefits that I just outlined and ensure that I'm protecting your savings, I need to make sure that you even qualify to proceed. I'm going to dot my I's, cross my T's, and make sure we have a bridge that we could safely use to cross. And they're going to appreciate that. And so in order to validate the ability to actually lock the loan, they need to meet a certain time period. So this is just a much gentler way to say, hey, hurry up, right? Hurry up, bro. But it's just a nicer way to say that. So the way you should is basically reservation. I'm going to need certain amount of documents, and how you say certain amount of documents is important also. I like to allude like, hey, I'm going to email you a quick checklist. I don't have them write down all the documents, because when they're writing down all the documents, sometimes you're given a long list. And as they're writing it down, they're like, oh man, I don't know where my tax returns are. Oh man, I don't know where my W-2 is. Oh man, I don't know where my insurance information is. And so you're actually discouraging them, and you're influencing them to procrastinate getting you that list. But you don't know it because you don't know any better. So from my years of experience, by just saying, hey, my assistant, or I'm going to send you a quick checklist of a few items that I need, super short list. And all this does is it allow me to confirm your reservation, and then we can actually start the process. So that's going to increase the likelihood of you getting the documents back very quickly. And then the next phase is submission to fund. So again, all these ingredients, all these pieces that I'm sharing with you is much like a chef when they make a dish. It's the sequential order and the phases of how to properly make that end result, which is a sale. And you're going to identify which piece or which ingredient you may be lacking, or that you need to focus on, which phase you need to adjust, because you're simply not making it through that phase onto the next step. So again, if you're catching this on the live, this is going to be recorded on the replay. I invite you to watch this again, and you're going to find like, oh yeah, it's the phase of credit pull to pitch, and I can't seem to make that happen. And when you pick apart that phase, or the information I'm sharing you within that phase, you're going to be able to make that happen. You're going to find more clarity. You're going to find a little bit more transparency in your conversion. But more importantly, you're going to be able to spot exactly where the leaks are. And the faster that you can identify where the leak is, the faster you can patch it up and start generating more business in an automated way, just in time for the holidays and going into 2019. So submission of fund. If you notice that from the loans that you submit are either canceling on you, right? Like you're getting the documents, you're doing flawless pitches, you're getting the steps in, you submit the loan, but then they fall out. Well, the reason why they fall out is going to be a clear sign of what you're doing wrong. And so, for example, if your loans are falling out because you constantly have to reprice, and you constantly have to reprice because your values are constantly coming lower, then you have to take a different approach from the beginning. So now you found the root of the problem. So ask yourself some questions like, where am I getting my estimated values from? Am I giving the estimated value? Do I have a biased opinion because I need this LTV, right? And so sometimes it's a clear sign of where you might be going wrong. So do a little bit further research on how you're using your estimated value, but also have a plan B. A plan B is always good to have in case you you have tight loan to value features in order to make the loan. And it's basically saying, okay, well, if the value comes in short here, then I know I have an answer to it, because ultimately that's going to help you avoid a restructure, and it's going to help you avoid kind of, I want to say dismissal, but disappointment from your prospect and telling them that their value came short. But more importantly, try to fix the root of the problem. And then another thing is, if you have loans that are falling out because debt to income ratio, you have to figure out, like, are you even scrubbing the income documents when you get it, or are you just taking the number from the conversation, putting the steps in the file, and then sending it on its way? You see, if you operate that way, you're just inviting your operations to work on wood, and that wood is going to revisit you in a form of a fire, and that fire is going to it's really going to disrupt your momentum, because now you're spending a lot of time putting out fires, and you're missing the opportunity to generate more sales. And every single day you need some time blocked off to generate new sales. Otherwise, your income is always going to be kind of like on this roller coaster, up and down type deal. And you want to avoid that. You want to have consistency in your life. And then finally, when the loan funds to referral, this is the most important ingredient, because I think that a lot of times when the loan funds, we just send a quick notice and say, hey, you're loan funded. You want to set up, like I had this email template that perfectly outlines a bridge to create referral business. And it's typically starts out something like, hey, congratulations, you're loan funded. I want to kind of set up your expectations so you know what to expect. In X amount of days, you're going to receive a funding package, or X amount of days, you're going to receive the wire of your proceeds to your bank. And then it opens up a bridge to leave a review. A review is the most powerful thing that you can obtain, because that review becomes social proof, and it becomes your bridge to get referrals from that prospect. If you're not asking for review, you're hurting yourself. So imagine if you funded 5 loans, 10 loans every single month, and you were good at getting reviews. You can collect these reviews, whether it's on your LinkedIn page, or whether it's on Social Survey, or whether it's on your Facebook page. Whatever it is, reviews are very important. It's their testimonials of their experience. Not all of them are going to be great, but you can't disregard those that are not good, because the ones that are not good are going to be the honest opinions. So if you ever bought anything from Amazon, if you're looking straight at the 5-star reviews, you're missing out. What you should be looking at is the 3-star reviews, because the 3-star reviews are going to be the honest opinions, right? They're probably going to be the least tainted, and it's going to let you know what was wrong with the product or what was wrong with the service. So it's important that you don't disregard the negative reviews, but more importantly, you capture the reviews and the testimonials, because that becomes your reason to revisit that funding and ask for referrals. You can say, hey man, I really appreciate that review you left me online. It's helped me capture a lot of business within your area, and you know what, I want to pay it forward. I want to do something good for you. So anyone that you care about, coworkers, family members, friends, I want you to give them my contact information. I'm going to take good care of them. And I want you to know that I'm not going to share any of your information. I'm not going to share what you did in your transaction. All that is fully confidential. I protect your privacy. But what I will do is ensure that they get the same treatment, the same accountability, the same transparency that you enjoyed and you talked about in your review. I'm going to transfer that service to them, because it's important that they have that service and that they experience what speaking to a professional is like. And I want to be that go-to person for them as well. And then later on, it becomes your bridge to redo business. And that's very, very important. If you can create a stream of referral business, if you can create a stream of consistent referral generation, meaning that you're getting referrals, you're getting leads that you don't have to telemarket to, you don't have to wait for your dialer to connect you with, that is going to give you an ungodly advantage against your competitors, and it's going to be nothing but icing on the cake. And so I think it's important for you to really, give yourself an opportunity to capture that information, and yeah. So I appreciate everybody that's here. That does end out the 30-minute session. I appreciate you, Angel, for joining. Thank you so much. Thanks. I am articulate. Thank you. Gucci Mane, what up, Patrick? Thanks for joining. JR, I know this class might be light, and everyone has their reason as to why not to comment or leave a review on the chat, and I completely get it. But the key thing is, though, whether you're catching it on the live or you're making time to watch the replay, you just got to make some time to invest in yourself, because these little pieces that you're putting into your craft is going to help you in the long run in generating something that's solid for you to rely on, and is something that you can really hold yourself accountable to, because it's going to create the consistency and the know-how to generate the business that you need to thrive and really feel the perks of being in this business. And I got an important announcement that's actually going to be happening tomorrow morning. I'm very excited. Again, the announcement is only going to go out to the community that receives emails from me. If you're not receiving any emails from me of these random fun facts or these tidbits, I strongly urge you to go to SalesRemastered.com, request a copy of the updated sales script, and use your personal email address. Make sure you're not using your work email. If you have requested it and you use your work email and you don't see it, well, now you know why. It's because your domain kicked my domain back. It's coming from Daniel at Sales Remastered. I'm very, very excited to announce this tomorrow morning. So be sure that you're getting my emails. If you signed up for a sales script, you're not getting it, or you haven't received an email from me in the last week or at all, it's probably because maybe you unsubscribed. And I want you to be careful, because if you do unsubscribe, it means I cannot communicate with you on email at all, even if it's for information that you requested. It literally, these laws of privacy now, with these new compliance levels, it's really protecting the end consumer from junk mail. And if you hit the unsubscribe button once, I can no longer communicate with you on email. So I strongly recommend, before you unsubscribe, just consider closing it out. If the message didn't necessarily apply value to you or was not on a topic that helped you, just ignore it. Move on to the next message. But there's content that I share in these email groups that I just don't share anywhere online. So I strongly recommend that you join that group by requesting a copy of the free sales script. And that's going to be your unlock to get into that announcement. Again, that announcement happens tomorrow. And I'm so excited for those who receive it, because it's going to be your opportunity to take control of your momentum, take control of your career and the results that you work so hard for. So I appreciate all of you guys' time. Thank you very much for joining me. I really do hope that you gathered some gold information in here that's going to help you produce more. It's going to help you generate more income. It's going to help you generate the confidence that you need, but more importantly, provide for yourself and for your family. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you guys next week on the live stream from 8:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you know someone else who needs the content that I share here, invite them to join you. You're probably getting an email of a notification that I am going live. For that email, make sure they get on this level with you. Maybe they sit at your cubicle, or you guys collectively go into a conference room in your place of business, and you guys really do sit down and actually listen to this information, because there's no other persona or influencer or channel that's giving out this information that's so precise for free. So think about that, okay? All right, I'll see you guys on the next one. Appreciate it. Bye.